Summer is prime jungle season, where everywhere you go there's friends growing so thick you can barely hear the neighbors, where spring's burst of growth has settled into this slow and steady, teeming with birds and bugs, hot and humid, spectacular growth, where whole parts of the garden have gotten completely inaccessible except for the paths that get you near enough to enjoy them like it's a theme park for different ecosystems. We have pasture, fern fields, woods, forest, swampy pasture, forest garden. It's all there. And I think it highlights the very best of this weird collaboration we have between us and this new wilderness, all in this lovely little island where the rules of the rest of the world are reversed because wildness is central and civilization can be pushed to the margins. But not everyone agrees that that's a good thing, because along with the jungle comes our yearly reminder of how little the world thinks of us. The wilder our forest gets, the more exuberant the growth, the more nervous our neighbors become, because naturally there is a concern about wildfires. And I don't want to get too deep into the argument between us, but essentially it goes something like, they think that so much growth is dangerous, and I think that it depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because nothing's safe when it comes to wildfire here, but our forest is about as safe as it gets. And though chop and drop is an important part of the way that we build soil, cutting this much growth at this moment in the year, right before summer heat and drought, will dry out all that organic matter so it can just sit on the floor all summer waiting to burn, isn't really the ideal way of doing things. But ecologic balance has to be weighted against 4 separate neighbors threatening to lodge complaints with the local government when the law is on their side. And because of the way things work in countryside Spain, the law is only enforced when relationships between neighbors sour. So whether we like it or not, whether it's right or wrong, our neighbors' opinions are part of our design. Which is all to say that a big part of my time this summer has been spent cutting a lot of blackberry and ferns. And they grow so strong that you can just turn around and when you look back, there's growth above your head. So to keep up with all that growth, I've got to chop and drop like you wouldn't believe. Especially along the borders with those neighbors, which I do while for the 1000th time in my life regretting not planting more trees earlier. When we first planted the forest, we started at the center of the land and kind of planted outward as we got more trees. So at the center of the land, where the deeper shade of the older trees slows the growth, chop and drop is much more manageable. But at the borders where the solar exposure is highest, the growth of the pasture is most extreme. And because it's also where my grandpa's old vineyard still is, it all grows in such a way that it gets tangled up above you and hangs on, making it even harder to clear. And to make matters even more complicated, I'll be going away for a while this summer, and I have to get this all done before I leave, all while trying to meet the stress of all of life's responsibilities, plus mulching gardens, pruning trees, writing these videos, trying to maintain friendships, a few odd jobs, maintaining the irrigation before the summer's inevitable drought comes, and cramming myself back under those old grapevines where the blackberry loves to reach down and grab my hair as if to say, like, let's see how you like it if we cut your hair at the wrong time. And since I'm balding, I don't really like it. I've honestly been pushed to my mental and physical limits this summer, to the point where I feel a bit like this snail. I don't know if you can see what's going on here, but there's a bird who isn't big enough to break this snail's shell on his own. So the bird is slamming the snail against the rock over and over until its shell breaks. Just like this snail, I've taken a long time to build my shell from the world. And in my eyes, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but it doesn't matter because some random bird can just come along and start breaking down your defenses. without really taking into account why you built that boundary in the first place. And inevitably, I spent a bit too long in that cycle where I had too much to do, so I pushed myself a bit harder, and then I started feeling exhausted, and then started using work as an escape to avoid that feeling of exhaustion, and I was just sprinting straight towards burning myself out until one afternoon, completely overwhelmed to the point where work stopped being an escape. My thinking all went dark, my chest wanted to feel anything else, and my legs just started walking me around the forest. Because I've used walking my whole adult life as a way to avoid feeling stress and anxiety. While I'm walking, my body's busy enough that I don't have to feel the discomfort in my body, or maybe my body's given what it wants, which is just to run away. In fight or flight in these situations, I choose flight. I told myself that if I could walk around the forest for long enough that I would calm down, but the truth is I was using the forest as an escape. And the older I get, the more sensitive I become, and those old strategies of dissociating from my feelings, they don't work as well as they used to. So walking didn't calm me down, and no matter how much I did walk, all that anxious pressure in my chest followed me wherever I went. But I was lucky to find the swing on my path. And I found that the best thing to do on a swing in a moment like that is not to swing, because that just made me more nauseous than I already was, but simply to rock back and forth. Rocking gave me a place where I could move and convince all those parts of me that wanted to flee that I am moving, while I could stay still and do what I actually needed to do in that moment, which was just let myself feel awful. While that rocking was like a direct line with that little infant inside me who just wants to sway and know everything's going to be okay. And I was able to rock there, feeling terrible for long enough that I got to feeling through all that stress that I'd been putting off, the neighbors not liking what we're doing, the stress of needing to finish with not enough time, the confusion that comes from knowing that there's no time of year that I love the forest more and in which the neighbors hate it more. And finally to think through for the 100th time this inevitable conflict between people who want to protect nature and those who want to shape it to their will. And at some point after all of that, my body flipped and I calmed down long enough for my nervous system to relax and know that things aren't as bad as I feel them. I made peace with knowing that I won't get everything done, but what I do finish will be enough. And I was actually able to look out at where I was and enjoy the beauty of our forest. I wish I could show you what it's really like to sit here, but no image really does it justice. But I think every part of a healthy ecosystem is like a painting where the longer you look at it, the more is revealed. And the longer I sat there, the clearer I saw the structure of the forest, marveling with every species, the ferns growing right into the peach and the willow growing over them both, the apples behind those and the willows behind those, all making this nice wave, and the pond growing its willow hair, which is just so funny to watch, while another apple to the south of a mulberry grows beside some oaks with an empress poking out over top of all of them. And after years of studying the theory of the many strata of a forest and waiting and being patient, it's all right here in front of me. And it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to watch this beauty unfold. So when I did get back to work, I was less stressed. And I was able to work at a softer pace, still not completely calm, but occasionally capable of appreciating how large everything has grown. For small moments, able to feel this small bit of awe at all the season's bird nests uncovered within the blackberry, and a bit of happiness that I waited to cut those blackberry long enough for those birds to raise their babes. I even got to enjoy the 1,000 little jobs like mini games. Keeping the blackberry hedges out of the path, cutting the comfreys that line the beds to mulch the paths, mulching the gardens and getting to enjoy every plant having its space, cleaning out the webs that bugs have made inside the irrigation and block them up, enjoying watching the forest mature where, after almost a decade of waiting, this will be the first time I'll be able to eat my own pecan and avocado, two foods that I genuinely hope one day will become staples in my diet, and reminding myself that before I can eat anything, first I've got to protect this land as best I can and enjoy the privilege of being here.